Have you ever looked into the eyes of a teenager and wondered what if, behind that innocent face, hides a monster? What if the boy next door, the one who plays video games, goes to school and smiles politely, is carrying a secret so dark that it can shatter an entire community? This is not fiction. These are real stories of kids who believed they were smart enough to outplay the system, clever enough to fool a courtroom, and lucky enough to escape justice. But what happened next proves one thing. No matter how young, no matter how innocent they appear, the truth always surfaces, and when it does, it destroys everything. Imagine being part of a town where a child suddenly vanishes. Neighbors leave their porch lights on, volunteers search the streets, and parents cling tightly to their kids. Everyone hopes for a miracle. But sometimes the monster people are searching for isn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. Sometimes it's living right next door. These are the cases of teenagers whose names will forever be tied to horror. Kids who weren't satisfied with video games or wrestling matches, but instead crossed the line into something far darker: murder. In today's story, we're diving into the chilling world of juvenile killers, twisted minds hiding behind young faces. You'll hear about the boy who hid his crime under his bed for days, another who thought crying in court would win him freedom, and the teen who proudly wore the word killer in front of the families he destroyed. And just when you think it can't get any worse, you'll see how one high schooler brutally stabbed his classmate over 100 times, only to post jokes on social media while police searched for her body. This is the side of true crime that most people avoid talking about. What happens when children kill? Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, what turns an ordinary teenager into a cold-blooded killer? Is it anger, neglect, a desperate cry for attention? Or is it something darker, something inside them that was always there, waiting for the right moment to explode? These questions don't just haunt investigators, they haunt parents, teachers, and entire communities. Because when a child commits a crime so brutal, so unthinkable, it shakes our faith in innocence itself. Our first story takes us back to Jacksonville, Florida, in 1998. A little girl named Maddie Clifton vanished from her quiet neighborhood. For 7 long days, her family and neighbors searched desperately, handing out flyers, knocking on doors, and praying for her safe return. No one could have imagined the truth. Maddie's body was hidden just feet away, in the bedroom of her 14-year-old neighbor, Joshua Phillips. Joshua, the boy everyone thought was ordinary, had spent a week pretending nothing happened. While volunteers scoured the streets outside, he played along, smiling and laughing, as if nothing was wrong. But behind closed doors, he was hiding a nightmare under his very bed. When investigators discovered the horrifying truth, even the judge was left shaken. He looked at Joshua and said that harming a child was one of the gravest sins imaginable. Quoting scripture, he warned that it would have been better for a person to drown with a stone tied around their neck than to harm an innocent. Joshua was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, but Joshua was only the beginning. The stories that follow are even more disturbing. A teenage babysitter who thought his fake tears would earn him mercy, a cold-hearted school shooter who mocked the families of his victims, and a high schooler who turned a shocking murder into a cruel social media joke. Each believed they could outsmart justice, but each one learned the same brutal lesson. No matter your age, no matter your appearance, the truth will always find its way out, and when it does, the price is heavier than they ever imagined. In 2013, a story unfolded in New York that stunned even the most experienced investigators. A 16-year-old boy named Dylan Shoemaker was left in charge of babysitting his girlfriend's child, a 23-month-old toddler named Austin. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Neighbors saw Dylan pushing the stroller, playing the role of a responsible caretaker. But behind closed doors, something far more sinister was happening. Dylan later claimed he only lost his temper for a moment. He said the baby wouldn't stop crying, and in his frustration, he struck the child again and again. By the time it was over, little Austin lay lifeless. A moment of anger had turned into a permanent tragedy. When Dylan was arrested, the courtroom saw a completely different side of him. He cried, he trembled, he begged the judge to understand. Through his tears, he said, "I never meant to hurt him. I didn't want him to die." His words painted the picture of a boy who made a terrible mistake, a boy who was sorry, a boy who wanted forgiveness. Some people in the audience even felt a flicker of sympathy because he looked so young, so fragile, so convincingly broken. But there was a problem. Dylan's tears were not what they seemed. The prosecution revealed something chilling. A recorded phone call between Dylan and his mother while he was in custody. In that recording, Dylan laughed and bragged that he was going to fool the jury. He told his mother that his blonde hair, young age, and fake crying would make everyone believe his story. "They'll feel sorry for me," he said, with a confidence that shocked everyone in the courtroom. That one piece of evidence shattered the mask he had built. The crying boy, the desperate teenager begging for mercy, was suddenly exposed as a manipulator. His words weren't the cries of regret. They were part of a performance. And when the jury heard the truth, sympathy vanished. The judge listened to the evidence carefully. When it was time to announce the sentence, Dylan stood in silence, his tears gone. The judge looked him straight in the eye and said that the crime was not just a moment of anger, but an act that took the life of a child who never had a chance to defend himself. The court declared Dylan guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced him to 25 years to life in prison. For the family of baby Austin, no sentence could ever heal the wound. They had lost a son, a grandson, a life that had barely even begun. And for the public, Dylan's case became a warning that not every tear in a courtroom is real. Sometimes, the person crying hardest is the one hiding the darkest truth. Think about it. A 16-year-old who thought he was clever enough to play with the justice system, who believed he could outsmart experienced judges and juries with nothing more than a performance. But in the end, the performance ended, and the mask fell. The story of Dylan Shoemaker is one of the most haunting reminders that true justice requires more than just emotions, more than just appearances. It looks past the tears, past the fake remorse, and digs into the truth. And when the truth came out, Dylan's plan collapsed like glass shattering on the floor. This case leaves us with a disturbing question. How many others out there have tried the same trick, hiding their cold hearts behind a curtain of tears? And how many more will try in the future? One thing is certain. Justice may be delayed, but it is rarely fooled. In 2012, the quiet town of Chardon, Ohio, woke up to a nightmare that no parent ever wants to face. It was a normal morning at Chardon High School. Students gathered in the cafeteria, laughing, eating breakfast, preparing for another ordinary school day. But within minutes, the air filled with screams, chaos, and the sound of gunfire. The shooter was not a masked stranger or an adult intruder. It was one of their own classmates, a 17-year-old named TJ Lane. TJ entered the cafeteria with a .22 caliber handgun and opened fire on his fellow students. Panic spread instantly. Chairs toppled, trays clattered to the ground, and students rushed for safety. Some hid under tables, others ran for the doors, and teachers tried desperately to shield those in their care. But for 3 young students, there was no escape. They were shot and killed in the place they thought was safe. Several others were badly injured. When TJ was arrested, the community was shaken to its core. How could someone so young unleash such horror? At first, people wondered if he was mentally ill, if there was something broken inside him that might explain the unthinkable. But as the trial unfolded, the truth became darker than anyone imagined. In court, TJ did not show remorse. He didn't shed a tear for the lives he destroyed or the families left shattered. Instead, he seemed almost amused by the chaos he had caused. But what truly shocked the world was the day of his sentencing. As the courtroom filled with grieving families, parents clutching photographs of their lost children, TJ walked in wearing a plain white t-shirt. Then, in front of everyone, he took it off to reveal another shirt underneath. In bold black letters, it read just one word: killer. Gasps filled the courtroom. The families of the victims stared in disbelief. This boy, who had already taken so much from them, was mocking them to their faces. And then, as if the insult wasn't enough, he turned to the families of those he murdered and smirked. With no hesitation, he cursed them, throwing vile words at mothers and fathers who had buried their children only weeks earlier. The judge sat silently for a moment, stunned like everyone else, and then delivered his ruling. TJ Lane would spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. There would be no chance of freedom, no chance of redemption, only endless years behind bars to reflect on the choices he made. For the families, the sentencing brought some closure, but the scars remained. Parents who once drove their kids to school every morning now visited a graveyard instead. Teachers who once welcomed smiling faces into their classrooms now lived with haunting memories of gunfire and chaos. TJ's case became one of the most chilling examples of how cold and detached a young killer could be. He wasn't the boy who made a mistake, or the teen who lost control in the heat of anger. He was someone who carried out his crime with precision and then mocked the pain he created. It was evil stripped of any disguise. Years later, TJ would briefly escape from prison, sparking a massive manhunt. But even freedom didn't last long. He was captured and returned to his cell, right back where he belonged. The escape only reinforced the same truth. No matter how clever you think you are, justice has a way of catching up. The story of TJ Lane is not just about a school shooting. It's about arrogance, cruelty, and the terrifying reality that sometimes the darkest monsters are not strangers in the night, but kids sitting in the same classroom as everyone else. It's a reminder that evil can wear any face, even one far younger than you'd expect. In 2021, a case from Florida gripped the nation and horrified even seasoned detectives. It was Mother's Day when 13-year-old Tristyn Bailey, a cheerleader known for her bright smile and energy, disappeared. She had spent the evening with friends, laughing and enjoying the weekend. But by morning, she was gone. Her family reported her missing, and almost immediately, the search began. The community came together, neighbors joined the hunt, and flyers were passed out across town. For hours, there was hope that she might be found safe, but that hope was shattered when her body was discovered near a wooded area. She had been stabbed 114 times. The brutality of the crime stunned everyone. This wasn't just murder. It was rage carved into her body over and over again. Police didn't have to look far for a suspect. Tristyn had last been seen with one of her classmates, a 14-year-old boy named Aiden Fucci. At first, Aiden tried to act like he knew nothing. He told investigators that they had hung out, but then went their separate ways. He even seemed calm, almost casual, as if he thought the story would be enough. But as the evidence came in, his lies crumbled quickly. The knife was missing from his home. His clothes had traces of blood, and chillingly, his own words betrayed him. In the back of a police car, while his classmate's body was still being searched for, Aiden pulled out his phone and made a Snapchat post. Smirking, he wrote, "Anyone seen Tristyn lately?" It wasn't guilt he felt. It was arrogance. When investigators confronted him with the evidence, the truth became undeniable. Aiden had led Tristyn into the woods that night and carried out one of the most vicious attacks ever seen from someone his age. The motive? Some say he wanted to feel what it was like to kill. Others believe it was anger, jealousy, or just pure evil. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. An innocent life ended in one of the most brutal ways imaginable. In court, the details shook everyone who listened. Prosecutors explained how Tristyn fought desperately for her life, how many of the stab wounds were defensive, showing she had tried everything to escape. Her last moments were filled with terror, but also with incredible courage as she struggled against the unimaginable. When Aiden was finally sentenced, the judge made it clear there would be no mercy. He was given life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Tristyn's family, nothing could erase the pain of losing her, but the sentence at least ensured that her killer would never walk free again. The courtroom heard heart-wrenching statements from her loved ones. Her sister described the empty chair at family dinners, the silence in their home where laughter once echoed. Her mother spoke of the nightmare of waking up every day knowing her daughter's life had been stolen. These weren't just legal proceedings. They were the raw wounds of a family torn apart. Aiden Fucci's case became known worldwide, not only for the brutality of the crime, but also for the shocking lack of remorse. He was not a boy who made a mistake, not a teen who acted in sudden anger. He was a teenager who carefully chose violence and then mocked the pain he caused. The murder of Tristyn Bailey is a haunting reminder that evil doesn't always come from hardened criminals or adults with long records. Sometimes it comes from someone sitting in the same classroom, someone you'd never suspect until it's too late. And it reminds us all of one harsh truth. Behind some young faces, there can be darkness deeper than anyone imagines. When you look back at these stories, one thing becomes painfully clear. Age does not erase responsibility. Joshua Phillips thought he could hide his crime beneath his bed. Dylan Shoemaker thought fake tears would win him sympathy. TJ Lane thought mocking his victims' families made him powerful. And Aiden Fucci thought he was untouchable, even turning a horrific murder into a joke. Each of them believed they were smarter than the system, clever enough to escape justice. But in the end, every mask slipped, every performance collapsed, and the truth spoke louder than their lies. The courtroom is a place where appearances often deceive. A childlike face can melt hearts. A trembling voice can make even the hardest person hesitate. But these cases show us that the justice system looks deeper than the surface. Judges and juries are trained to see through performances, and when the evidence speaks, even the youngest criminals cannot run from it. Think about the families who lived these nightmares. Parents who tucked their children into bed one night, only to wake up the next morning and find them gone forever. Brothers and sisters who lost their best friends. Entire schools and neighborhoods left scarred by the horror that unfolded in their backyards. For them, no sentence, no prison term can ever bring back the laughter, the joy, or the dreams that were stolen. What remains are broken hearts and memories that will never fade. And yet, in a way, these sentences do bring a form of justice. Life without parole means that Joshua Phillips will never again step outside prison walls. Dylan Shoemaker will spend decades behind bars before he is even considered for release. TJ Lane will grow old in a cell, forever remembered for his arrogance. Aiden Fucci will never again walk free, his teenage years and every year after that spent in the shadow of the crime he committed. For them, the rest of life is not about freedom, but about the endless silence of a prison cell. But beyond the punishments, these cases force us to confront an even darker truth. Sometimes evil wears the face of youth. We are taught to see children and teenagers as innocent, as blank pages waiting to be written on. And most of the time that is true. But these rare and chilling stories show that even at a young age, some people choose paths of cruelty, manipulation, and violence. It is a reminder that innocence is not always guaranteed by age. So, what can we take away from all this? First, that justice has no age limit. Whether you are 14 or 40, a crime as grave as murder will be met with consequences that last a lifetime. Second, that appearances can be deceiving. Just because someone looks young or cries in front of a judge does not mean they are telling the truth. And third, that behind every headline and every courtroom case are families who live with the pain forever. These stories are not meant just to horrify. They are meant to remind us of the fragility of life, of how quickly it can be stolen, and how deeply it must be cherished. They remind us that no matter how clever a killer thinks they are, justice has a way of catching up, and when it does, there is no escape. And as you reflect on these cases, ask yourself, what does true justice mean? Is it enough to lock someone away forever? Or is true justice found in the way we remember the victims, in the way we honor their lives by never forgetting their names? Because in the end, justice is not only about punishing the guilty, it is also about keeping the memory of the innocent alive. So if these stories shocked you, if they opened your eyes to the chilling reality of what some teenagers are capable of, then make sure to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more true crime stories that reveal the hidden darkness behind ordinary faces. The next case we uncover may be even more shocking than the last, and you will not want to miss it.